guys, welcome or welcome back. Today I am going to be giving you all of the winter and festive book recs that you need to see yourself over the next few months. If you've been here for a while, if you've seen several of my videos, then you already know I'm a mood reader. I like to go all in on the vibes of the season. So if you're like me too, then I'm hoping you're going to find this video very useful because I'm only giving you, I've tried to be selective, and I'm only giving you the very best of the best that are really going to set the vibe, the cozy, dark, wintry vibe for this time of year. If you saw my autumn version of this video, then you already know the structure of how I do it, but I'm giving you book recs across the board. So whether you want fantasy, romance, mystery thriller, dark academia, I have a book rec for you. We're going to start with winter recs that'll see you over the next few months in general. Then I'm going to give you my very specific Christmassy books for when you want to be extra festive. And then finally, I'm going to give you my winter/festive TBR, the books that I really want to be getting to over the next maybe month or so. Maybe this is essentially like my December TBR, probably December leading into January TBR, my priority books that I think are perfect for this time of year that I want to get to, just in case you want to read them along with me, and then we can vibe and chat about the same books at the same time. Okay, let's dive straight into it. I'm going to start with fantasy because that is the main chunk of the recommendations that I've got. I've said it before, I'll say it again. There is something about spring, summer. I just can't do a fantasy book at all. So as soon as autumn, winter comes around, it feels like the floodgates open and I am all in on my fantasy hype. That is all I have been reading over the last couple of weeks, and I have to say I'm absolutely loving it. So book one on my list, we really did have to start here. I've got Quicksilver by Callie Hart. If you haven't read this book or heard of this book, the reason why I'm coming straight out the gate and recommending this one to you is because as of when this video goes live, the second book in this series, Brimstone, will have been released yesterday. So if you want a book where you can dive into the hype that is live right now, pick this up immediately. This is a very classic, very typical romantasy story. It's high fae, so we've got fairies, but we also have vampires, which I think is a really fun mix to have like fae and vampires in the same story together. We've got a very poor thief MMC who ends up getting sucked into a fae realm where she discovers that she has this power, this ability to control a substance called Quicksilver. She ends up trapped in an oath with this very broody, very grumpy high fae male named Kingfisher. And the story, it's a romance, right? So the story follows a romance plot line with a lot of your classic fantasy story elements to it. We've got some great found family, we've got some entertaining side characters, we have a cute little winter fox in here. This is one of those books that falls into that category of like 5-star for vibes, not 5-star for masterpiece. So I think the more highbrow readers maybe don't love this book so much, but I had such a whale of a time reading this, and I've actually just finished my re-listen. I'm just gonna come out here and say it straight away. You have to audiobook this, okay? It's a super, I think you will not enjoy this book nearly as much if you read it. If you aren't necessarily somebody who's like chronically online and is not necessarily on TikTok and Instagram and things, then you might not have heard the viral soundbite of Fisher, the male main character. He says this little thing about introducing our female main character to all 7 gods. Yeah, if you, it's one of those things where if you know, you know. If you don't know, listen to the full audiobook and get to know because whoa. Like I said, I just finished my reread. I will be listening to Brimstone, which is the next book in the series. Like as soon as it's out, I will be consuming it. Can't wait to tell you my thoughts on it already. But if you just want a good fantasy story and you want all the swoony elements that you typically love in a romantasy, then this is such a solid choice to pick up. Okay, next. Next, we're gonna be talking about one of my new favorite books, okay? I don't have the physical copy yet. Still need to go book shopping to buy them. But I have already crashed out on the post section of this channel. But the next books, 2 of them I'm recommending is The Wolf King and the Night Prince. For my ACOTAR girlies, okay? For my ACOTAR girlies, you have to pick this up. Not fae. This is a story about werewolves or wolves, and a girl gets taken. She is a princess who is due to be married to this horrible man, and she gets rescued by this kind of big, hulky, caveman-y kind of wolf who takes her away. He is the alpha of his pack. Of course, it's a romance. There's lots of twists and turns. And then the second book, okay, I had a good time during the first book. The second book is like a 5-star, it's like a Mist and Fury level crash out. That is all I can say. I was like so consumed by these stories. Again, the first book, I'm very specific with my recommendations, okay? The first book, The Wolf King, I recommend you read it. The second book, The Night Prince, you have to audiobook it. Please don't defy this recommendation. You have to audiobook it. And if you're a Vampire Diaries girly and you liked Enzo in the Vampire Diaries, specifically if you kind of like his voice, there is a character in book 2 who has like exactly that voice. I haven't actually looked up the voice actor to see if it's just him, because that is how similar to me he sounds. But he sounds exactly like Enzo, and honestly his character is quite a lot like Enzo as well, like that kind of funny, sarcastic, kind of bad boy thing, but it's like secret, you know the vibe I mean. Anyway, please go read The Wolf King and The Night Prince so that we can talk about it. It's fun, it's high stakes, it's swoony, it ticks every single romantasy box that you could possibly have. Oh, and the alpha of the pack has a really thick Scottish accent, which is also delightful on audiobook as well. Sticking with the wolves thing, another wolfy book that I finished recently that I do feel like I've talked about a lot on my channel, but for anyone that hasn't heard me yap about this, I recently read Direbound by Sable Sorensen. This is not werewolves, this is dire wolves, and think Fourth Wing, but instead of dragons, you're bonding to these giant fluffy dire wolves, and the romance is better than Fourth Wing, in my opinion. We follow our female main character who ends up signing up to this training academy, this college, because she's trying to find her sister who's gone missing, and to do that she has to bond to a dire wolf. I absolutely loved this story. I thought the plot and the storytelling was so well done. There was so much in here that was about pack dynamics and the bonds between the humans and their wolves, and then the bonds between the wolves themselves, and just, it's one of the things that we all love about a fantasy story so much, is when you get like the true nitty gritty of an entire other universe that just makes it feel so alive and so fun and so real. And I think Direbound like really does that so well. There is romance in this book, like I think it is inevitably a romantasy story, but the romance kind of feels a little bit on the back burner in this book, which I really enjoyed, because it means that we have like a true slow burn on our hands. The next book is coming out next year. Cannot wait for it, because I think the romance will really start to pick up in the second book, and I just thought this was so well done, like so well done. It wasn't 5-star, but man was it close, like man was it close. And I think the more books that come out in the series, like I just hope they keep getting better and better. If you're not into the vibe of a book where there's only one book out in the series so far and you really want to sink your teeth into an entire other universe, and if you're also a Throne of Glass girly, then if you haven't done it yet, why haven't you read the Kindred Cursed saga? So far we have 3 books out in the series. The 4th and final book is hopefully coming out next year, but still a little bit TBC. This is another epic high fantasy fae story, very Throne of Glass, in that the first book is just really the very tip of the iceberg, and then as you get into books 2 and books 3, the whole world just explodes and you get so much adventure and magic and romance and high stakes, and it's just a really good one for this time of year. If you want to start a story and just get yourself immersed in one epic universe and just hunker down for the winter and go, this is where I'm gonna like set up camp and just hang out with these characters, which I love to do. Like, ideally in a series, I just want to read them back to back, and I want to be in that world for as long as I can before I move on to entirely new characters and an entirely new setup. Like this is your next Throne of Glass adventure. Okay, final one before we leave behind fae and wolves. And I know this book has been out for a while and there's a very good chance you've read it, but I feel like this book does not get enough hype in my humble opinion. If you haven't read the Crescent City series, specifically if you haven't read House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J Maas, what are you doing? I really believe this book is a masterpiece. I know so many people that read ACOTAR, they read Throne of Glass and they stop because they're like, oh, I've heard Crescent City isn't as good as whatever. No. This book, this one book, whatever criticism can come next for the next ones, I don't care. This book is a masterpiece. House of Earth and Blood is an urban fantasy series, which means that it's fantasy where you've obviously got fae and angels, and the coolest thing about this series is you have all of these other species. In future books, you get mermaids and mermen, and I now all of a sudden can't think of all of the creatures you get. You get so many different magical creatures, like all crammed into one universe and one story, which I personally love. You get all of those fantasy magical elements set in like modern day city living. So our female main character is like a bit of a party girl. She goes to clubs. they've got cell phones, there's baseball games, there's social media, like it's all in here. And personally, I think that's really fun to mix it up from all of kind of the swords and chainmail kind of fae stories where they're cooking meat over a fire in the wilderness. Like I think it's really nice to mix it up and then all of a sudden have like, you're getting dressed up in your stilettos for a night out on the town, but there's also vampires there and there's witches there and there's mermen and like, anyway, I think the world and the setup is cool. The story, it's a murder mystery. Also kind of unique. This entire book is basically a murder mystery plot where the female main character's best friend gets murdered and she wants to find out what happened to her, and she teams up with an angel named Hunt, and the two of them end up going on this quest to find out what happened. And as with all SJM books, like if you know, you know, the last 20-30%, like you need to be sat. You can't read the end of an SJM book like over several days. You need to know that for the final 30%, you have time in your day carved out to sit and finish it in one go, because it gets so intense at the end of her books. In this book, I think the ending is the best of any of her books. Sensational. The Hoover, if you've read it, sensational. So anyway, if you've been avoiding reading the Crescent City series, like I'm endorsing it, okay? This is my recommendation to you. It's time to pick this up. Okay, leaving behind fae and wolves, let's move on to some other magical beings. If you would like a really neat, truly fantastic completed duology that isn't huge and chunky and really long, have you tried The Crimson Moth / The Heartless Hunter if you're on the other side of the pond? The second book in this series, Rebel Witch, was absolutely flawless. Like not a word out of place, not a plot detail that I would change. Like it was fantastic. This is a story about a witch and a witch hunter. You want enemies to lovers? This is enemies to lovers. These two hate, well, actually more specifically, they do hate each other, but more specifically, he hates her he, as a witch hunter, like fundamentally truly detests witches, and you get so much like context and time in Gideon's head for like how much he truly hates witches, and you really think, how on earth is this going to be a romance? Like how on earth are these two ever gonna fall for each other? Because it's like not one of those books where you're like, oh yeah, well they fancied each other from the very beginning. No. These two, it's true enemies to lovers, and I cannot comprehend how Kristen Ciccarelli packed so much adventure and plot and fantastic storytelling and like swoony lovely moments all into two books that are not super chunky. I mean, look, compare House of Earth and Blood to Crimson Moth. Like I said, if you want a really neat completed duology that's a little bit different to all of the other fantasy books that you've read so far that are all fae, witches, cat and mouse, it'll have you on the edge of your seat right till the very last page. Love. Okay, next we have even more witches with the Kingdom of the Wicked trilogy. Another one where the concept of the story feels super fresh and unique. The Kingdom of the Wicked trilogy follows Emilia, whose twin sister is murdered, and they are both witches, and she wants to find out what happened to her sister, and she ends up having to team up with Wrath, who is one of the 7 princes of hell, to try and figure out what happened to her sister. It is a romance over the course of the entire trilogy. The story like builds and builds and gets bigger and bigger. The universe that it's set in, it kind of feels, well, it basically is Italy. I think there's even a map in the front that looks exactly like Italy and like Sicily as well. It kind of happens across both. There isn't a map in the front of the first one, maybe it's the second one. You actually like get a map of the universe, but kind of picture Gothic Italian vibes in a very dark, kind of spooky, witchy town / land, but then you've got this demon prince of hell. I also just have to say about this trilogy, okay, because I think this is probably one of the best accolades a book can get. Is this trilogy, like, are these some of my favorite books of all time? No. But is Wrath, the male main character, one of my, I would say, top 5, maybe he'll even get bumped higher than that, top 5 fantasy book boyfriends of all time? Like, yeah, he is. I think about Wrath all the time. There's something about this man. There is something about Wrath that's just top tier to me. Like if you are hunting for your next favorite book boyfriend, your next favorite fantasy book boyfriend, honestly give Wrath a try. Like the romance in particular in books 2 and 3, some of my favorite fantasy romance stories. Like I can remember it so vividly. Also, if you are somebody that loves to get like stuck into a world and then just live in it for a while, there are other books that are after this trilogy about Wrath's brothers, so some of the other princes of hell. And what's so fun about them is that each of the princes of hell preside over one of the different like 7 deadly sins. So we've got Wrath, and then he's got his brothers, which are like greed and envy and sloth and etc, etc. I personally love a 7 deadly sin concept. I think it's really fun. The other books in the series, I have to say, I haven't loved, but this trilogy I think is really good, really different. highly recommend. Next up, we have Witchy Adjacent with Anathema by Kerry Lake, which is one of my most strongly recommended like October reads books. It is a very gothic, very dark, kind of leaning horror story about Mavis, who is a girl who lives in a very religious, almost kind of cult-like town on the edge of these very creepy woods, which are called the Eating Woods. Anyone that goes into those woods never comes out alive. And she basically ends up being forced into these woods and stumbles into this, I think it is maybe Fae, but into this Fae realm where she ends up, I don't know if it's in an oath with or stuck with, but she ends up with Zavander, who is this very deadly assassin, and his magic is super cool. He's got this like scorpion thing, which is really unique. I don't really know how to explain the plot of this, but this book was so immersive. I think this is one of those books that's a little bit Marmite. I know some people that have really struggled to get into it. I was so sucked in to this very creepy, very dark, like very wintry universe. If you like your romance a little bit darker, if you like your atmosphere a little bit darker, a little bit creepier, like I said, this is like leaning horror. Some of the stuff in this book is really not very nice, but so gripping. And the second book, Eldritch, also very recently came out. I think it was September, October kind of time. So you also got some pretty fresh hype with this one if you wanted to dive into this book. I also think that the foundations that were laid in this book, with all of the family trees that you get in the front of the book and a lot of the different races of magical beings that you get spelled out at the beginning, I think this is going to be a really epic, like I think this could be one of the next biggest fantasy series that like TikTok and all those kind of things really gets obsessed with. I foresee, I don't know how many books are going to be in this series, but it feels like they've laid really strong foundations for some super cool stuff. And I love it when you get a fantasy book that just like challenges you a little bit more. I would say this one is a more complex fantasy. If you're like brand new to fantasy, then maybe don't start with this one. But I'm kind of obsessed with learning all the terminology and just like going on this crazy adventure with Mavis and Zavander. I haven't read Eldritch yet, but I'm so keen to get to it. If you want to stay spooky and mist cloaked, then another two books that, to be honest, I do recommend pretty regularly. We have One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns, which are the two books in the Shepherd King duology by Rachel Gillig. Rachel Gillig knows how to write an atmospheric book. She really and truly does. She also knows how to write a very unique magic system. This story follows Elspeth, who literally has a monster called the Nightmare that lives inside her head. She ends up working with this highwayman to try and save their realm from this literally like, I don't know if it's like a people eating, but this like deathly fog that covers the land. They're trying to save their realm from this death mist, death fog. And to do that, they have to go across their kingdom trying to collect these magic playing cards. They need all 12 cards in order to save the kingdom and for Elspeth to get this monster out of her head. It's such an immersive, dark, like perfect wintry book for this time of year. In book 2, you also start to get multiple POVs, and the new point of views that you get in the second book, I just thought added to it even more. Two Twisted Crowns was my favorite book out of the two, and I love a duology that gets better in the second book and that neatly wraps up the entire story in 2 books. So satisfying, perfect. Again, if you just want like a neat package of a story over the next couple of months. Such a good one, add it to your TBR. And then if you're not so much into the dark thing, the creepy thing, the horror thing, you want something cozier, more comforting, a little bit more magical than scary creepy, then have you read Divine Rivals yet? Because if you haven't, this book is one of my god tier books. Divine Rivals, I think, is perfect. I think it's a perfect book. 6-star, infinity stars, like whatever you want to call it for me. It is a duology, so there's 2 books in the series, but the first book, Divine Rivals, like this is the main event. Ruthless Vows is less good, but you'll not be able to not read it because the end of Divine Rivals leaves you on such a cliffhanger. You'll be diving for the second book. But Divine Rivals follows 2 war correspondents who are rival work adversaries, and they essentially end up communicating to each other via magical typewriters. I've said it before in previous vlogs, but I love a story where there's a romance and the 2 main characters are communicating via like something. Ideally, it's letters, magical typewriter, like that's as good as it gets. But if it's text, if it's email, if it's some other medium they're communicating across, I just love it. Like it really does something to me. I love it. And this is the blueprint for that. The romance is so sweet and so wholesome. And this war that they end up going off to write about is amongst a war of the gods. So you kind of have magic in this world, like the typewriter, obviously, that they're communicating via is magical. The war that is going on is a war between gods, but it kind of feels almost like a little bit magical realism-y in the era that these war correspondents exist in. It feels very World War II. too. Like the clothing, the food, like the setup, it does feel kind of that 1940s era-esque, and there's something about that that's just like so wholesome, and it feels quite a lot like, I feel like some of you are going to disagree with me on this, but if you have read them, hopefully you do get where I'm coming from. I think the vibe of these books is quite a lot like Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. You know, that kind of like wartime, but there's also magic, but it kind of feels like real because you're in a land that feels like a normal town or like a normal city, but there's magic there. Like that is the kind of energy that these books give, and they're just wonderful and lovely, and please read them if you haven't read them, because they'll just, I think they're perfect. Like, well, these ones to me are almost leaning festive, but I guess that's because in my universe, like Harry Potter means festive, and like there's just something about this that feels a little bit like that. But I could gush for a long time about these books, but they're lovely. They're so lovely. Okay, honestly, I could keep going with so many more on the fantasy list, but I'm gonna finish with bold call for me to say my two favorites, but I think these are now my two favorites. Up first, let's talk about Six of Crows. Again, so many of you have probably read this, but if you haven't, it's a Hall of Famer for me. Like, it's a Hall of Fame level book. If you want, to me, this book is exactly Ocean's 11 meets Peaky Blinders. Like, there is Peaky Blinders energy in this, but it is a group of misfit criminals that all conduct a seemingly completely impossible heist together as a group. The found family is like Blueprint found family, all of these misfits all forming bonds with each other and friendships with each other, and like there's a few romance crumbs in there that you get in this which are just, oh, they feed you so well and not at all at the same time. It's like that heart grippy feeling. It will have you on the edge of your seat. Like the way I was just like barreling through this book, desperate to know how the heist turned out, and the whole storytelling and the writing and everything, I just absolutely loved it. It is a duology. I haven't read the second book yet because I'm so scared to just like complete this world and finish this universe, and I don't want to. I've also seen a spoiler for the second book, which like I'm trying to convince my brain to forget that spoiler before I read it, but I don't think I am ever gonna forget it, so I think I just need to like crack on and just read the second book. But if you haven't read Six of Crows, it's one of those books that I just think you can recommend it to literally anyone. Like anyone will enjoy this book. It's for everyone, and it's fantastic. And then finally, has to be like my book of the season. I read this at the beginning of autumn, and I've thought of it, I don't know, every day. Like I can't get it out of my head, and I need book 2 so badly, and that is Rose in Chains by Julie Soto. This is my first Hermione retelling. I've shown this picture so many times, but like it literally has me in a chokehold. Look at this, look at this. This artwork is just something else. If you're a fanfic girly, then you'll already know this story is the traditionally published version of the fanfic The Auction. The story begins at the end of a war where the dark forces have won, and Bryony, who is a princess, is sold to a boy that she used to go to school with, who is a member of like the dark force kind of baddie side of things, and she and all of her friends and her family are either murdered and killed at the end of this war or are sold off into the elite of these dark forces. This is a dark book. There are discussions and references of some pretty grim themes that if you are somebody that needs to, I would definitely recommend looking up the trigger warnings for it. You basically then just follow Bryony existing in her new reality of being a slave to this family of this boy that she went to school with and was kind of like a rival with at school, and her wondering where all of her friends have ended up and if they could possibly start a rebellion, if any of her friends are still alive, where the rest of her family is. She's also going through grief because of the war and everybody she lost as part of it. And then you basically get the crumbs of a romance beginning. Like, I think it is supposed to be a romance story, but there is so much more to it than that. And I just was obsessed. I don't know what else to tell you. Like, I'm not somebody that likes death and misery and despair. And maybe that tells you that this book isn't as dark as maybe it sounds, or maybe I have more of an appetite for sadness than I thought I did, but I really don't think I do. I don't really love sadness. But there is something about this that was so like, I just need more. I need more. I need more. I need more. And we don't get the second book until the end of December next year, or maybe it's the beginning of, I don't know, we don't get it till December 2026. So I don't know, maybe I actually don't read this yet. Like, I'm dying, and maybe I'm gonna have to die for a whole year, but selfishly I want you to read it so that we can talk about it. But Rose in Chains is like my favorite book of like the autumn winter season that I've read so far this year. obsessed. Okay, kind of feels killer to stop there on fantasy, but I feel like we're giving you so many recs. I need to just like cut the cord, otherwise I'll just keep going and going and going. Next up, let's talk dark academia. I've only got 2 book recs for you in this category. A short list, but boy are they good ones. Starting off, we have Nocticadia. This is heading back, it's Kerry Lake again, so we're heading back into that kind of almost leaning horror vibe, and I think this is a very good fantasy but not fantasy book. There's something about this that just kind of feels like a fantasy to me. I think that's because the story follows Lilia, whose mum dies from this really gruesome, horrible kind of parasite, and she then heads off to this university that she discovers is studying this parasite to learn more about it and understand if that really is the thing that killed her mother, where she meets Professor Bromwell, who is the leading professor on the research of this parasite. And it is a dark romance story. Our main character, Professor Bromwell, is kind of nicknamed Dr. Death. And I have said it before, because again, this is another one of my like core October-y read books, but again, I think also very good for like the dark, creepy depths of winter. This man is not morally grey. He's not like does some bad things in the name of war and justice and vengeance. No, this man is just like black. He's just kind of bad. He does some truly horrific things, and somehow a romance develops and like you're still swooning anyway. The story does get incredibly far-fetched towards the end, which is why I also think it almost kind of leans fantasy, but it's technically not. It's dark academia, and I was so gripped by this story. Another book I highly recommend that you audio, because Dr. Bromwell's voice, is it Bromwell or Bramwell? Bramwell. Dr. Bramwell's voiced Dr. Death, whatever you want to call him. His voice is sensational in the audiobook. So for my dark romance girlies, for my dark academia girlies, for my leaning horror gals, this is like, you've probably already read it if you are one of those girls, because this is like so high on the list of a fantastic book in that category. Maybe this is more of a rep for people that might want to get into it. Like if you want to get into some of those kind of spookier, darker books, here you go. And then you might already know which book I'm going to recommend next, because it's a very recent read and one of my new favorite books, probably of all time. I probably would go as far as to say that, and that is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. Guys, I've gushed so much about this book in my recent vlogs that I don't want to be too repetitive, but for anyone that hasn't seen those vlogs, this story follows Oliver, and it begins when Oliver is being released from prison after serving 10 years for the murder of one of his classmates at college, where him and like his 7 group of friends all study Shakespeare, and they are all completely obsessed and engrossed in their art. And one of the 7 ends up dead, and Oliver goes to prison for 10 years for that murder. But the book really follows you listening to Oliver recount his time at college, and you're trying to work out if it was actually him that murdered one of his friends, or if it was somebody else, or if it was several people, and which one of his friends was it that was murdered, because you don't know that at the beginning of the book. It's so gripping and so kind of moody. It's perfect for winter. It really does give off such strong, like wintry, dark, cold vibes. There is something a little bit almost cult-like and creepy about the college university that they're studying at. The whole kind of concept behind how the murder comes about is that the students that are studying Shakespeare become so engrossed and obsessed with their art, it becomes really hard to tell when they're acting in their plays and when they are existing in their normal lives. Those lines get really blurred, and then villains in the plays kind of cross over to become villains in real life as well. It's just so well done. The literary techniques in here are so much fun to read and so fantastically executed. And a couple of the main characters in this book, like you just want to wrap them in the biggest hug. Like Oliver, I just want to give him a hug and a squeeze, and I love him. I love James. It's amazing. Like it's just a really, really fantastic story. And again, another book that I would recommend to pretty much anyone. Like I can't think of a category of person that wouldn't enjoy this book. Highly, highly recommend. Okay, moving on to a few mystery thrillers, which I think is such a fun genre to read at this time of year. First up, we have a book that again I read in the month of October, so not too long ago, and that is the Mindfuck series by S.T. Abbey. This is, you know how they say there are different categories of 5 stars? You've got like 5-star for vibes, 5-star masterpiece. This is a 5-star vibes kind of a book. The writing is not the best. It's not the most sophisticated for sure, and does feel quite a far cry from something like If We Were Villains, but The plot of this book is so just superior. Like, it really felt like a movie in your mind. It was so like fun and well considered and has you on the edge of your seat. The story follows Lana, who's probably one of my favorite FMCs that I've ever read. She is a serial killer and she ends up in a relationship with the FBI agent, and you follow their relationship as she is continuing to murder people that are part of like a broader mission that she's on to kill like certain people, and him being her boyfriend essentially trying to hunt her down. But it's so much like bigger and rich than that. Like, he has other cases that he's working on as well. As the story progresses, you get more and more revealed about Lana's past and her story and why she's a killer. Some of this is really dark. Like, you get pretty in-depth scenes of her killing people, and you also get some really horrific descriptions of what happened to her in her past. Some of that I honestly found quite hard to read, but honestly I really was on the edge of my seat throughout this entire book. Like I said, probably one of the best stories and like plots I've ever read. I loved the way the whole thing wrapped up. I don't know if it was like an epilogue or if the chapters just kept going, but the story was so satisfyingly completed and I just absolutely loved it. If you like mystery thriller, if you just want a really fun, engrossing plot, then this is such a good one for you. Next, a book that is always high on my recommendations list, but I don't have the physical copy of it because I listened to the audiobook of it, which is exactly how you need to consume it if you think you're interested in it. The story follows Lucy, who's born in a small town, and one day she wakes up covered in the blood of her best friend, and her best friend has been found dead. Lucy doesn't remember what happened. There's no proof to convict her for the murder, but everybody suspects it was Lucy that killed her friend. So Lucy ends up moving away, and the story really begins when Lucy moves back to this small town in Texas, I think it is, because there is a true crime podcaster that is starting to investigate the murder and is trying to find out what happened to Lucy's best friend and if it really was Lucy that killed her or not. Because it is a story about a true crime podcaster, you have to listen to the audiobook of this rather than read it, because it really does feel like you're listening to a true crime podcast. There's like music intros for when the podcast segments happen and kind of back and forth between the podcast interviewer and Lucy, who ends up kind of agreeing to be interviewed for certain segments of the podcast. It's so well done. The podcaster basically goes round the small town interviewing different people from it and trying to like piece together what happened. You'll be on the edge of your seat because Lucy is the narrator of the story and she doesn't know if she did it or not, and she's trying to work it out. So you're kind of trying to work it out at the same time that she's trying to work it out. And it's fun, it's gripping. It wasn't necessarily like a 5-star read for me, but I did really enjoy it, and it's such a good one when you just want to be thoroughly entertained when you're like listening to a book while you wrap presents or go Christmas shopping and you want something in your ears whilst you're kind of going about doing stuff, but you want to be gripped by a good story. And then my final mystery thriller wrap is one of my favorite series of all time, and that is the Natural series. There are 4 books in this series and a novella. I've talked about this series so much. Again, I don't want to go on and on about it because you know the affliction. As soon as you start talking about one of your favorite series, you can just like go on and on and on. But The Naturals follows a group of teenagers who are recruited into a program that is run by the FBI, where all of these teenagers live in a house and they are fed cold cases by the FBI for them to try and solve. Each of the teenagers has like almost a supernatural special ability. They are so incredibly talented at the thing that they're good at. We have one that is like a superhuman almost. I mean, they're not, they are humans. This is not fantasy in any way, but she has this incredible ability to detect liars. So she can see like the slightest movements or inflections in voice or whatever it is. She's like a superhuman lie detector. We have a guy that is incredible at reading emotions, and he can see like the slightest flicker over someone's face and he knows exactly which category of emotion that is. We have profilers that can build entire predictions of people's future actions and personalities based on very small details that they get about the way they dress or the things they did. We have a girl who is phenomenal at maths and pattern recognition and numbers and sequences. She is the coolest. Protect Sloane at all costs. I love her. But it's a story of such a good found family. Like, I love this group so much. There's like a little bit of romance in there. You get such fun like dynamics between each of the teenagers. The cases they're working on had me so gripped. Like, I know this is technically a YA series. I personally don't really, I mean, whether a book is categorized like YA or not YA, like really and truly means nothing to me. If you enjoy the story, you enjoy the story. And to me, YA just means like young adult and up. It really didn't feel YA. Like, some books can feel quite young. This didn't feel young at all. Every now and again, you'll get a chapter that is in the point of view of the serial killer that you're hunting in the story, and it's creepy as hell. I was like, oh no, no. This is giving me the heebie-jeebies. I loved this series. You will be You'll be so gripped. You'll be on the edge of your seat. If you haven't read this yet, like, please give it a go. I can't see why you wouldn't love it. And then finally, for those of you that feel like winter is dark and miserable enough and all you want to do is sink into a lovely, comfy, cozy romance, let's talk all of my favorite love stories. First up, some books for if you want to be a little bit on theme with the time of year, but you don't want to get that deep about it and you just want to have a good time. Your top priority books to read, very highest priority on your list, is some paranormal romance by Ali Hazelwood. She does this genre so well. She needs to write some more of these books. These two books, Mate and Bride, are two in a kind of interconnected standalone series. So you could technically dive straight into Mate. Is that the right one? You could technically dive straight into Mate without having read Bride, but if you know me, you know that I like getting the crumbs from previous books, and I think it's well worth reading Bride first and then getting to Mate. But this story, the first book, Bride, is about a werewolf and a vampire. We have a werewolf and a vampire romance. My Twilight girlies, my Vampire Diaries girlies, here we go. The first book follows Misery, who is the daughter of like the leader of the vampires, and she ends up in an arranged marriage with the alpha of the werewolf pack that's closest to the vampire realm or city. It's kind of like normal life. I mean, are they in like, I almost feel like they're based in a city that we would know. Like, are they in Canada? I can't remember, but it feels very like normal life, normal, like there's humans and there's vampires and there's werewolves in this world. She ends up in an arranged marriage with the alpha of the nearest werewolf pack to basically keep the peace between the weres and the vampires, and that doesn't entirely work so well, and there's a lot that happens, but it's mainly a romance. Ali Hazelwood does this so well. As you know, we're gonna have witty banter, we're gonna have fun side characters that make you laugh, and we're gonna have some very swoony, giggly, kicky your feet moments. And then you move on to Bride, which is about the alpha of a different werewolf pack and the best friend of Misery in this book, the female main character. This book is so good. I think the male main character in this, Cohen, is so funny. Like, he's grumpy, but really funny. And I think a lot of times in books, you get like golden retriever funny or like grumpy and broody, and in this we have like grumpy and funny, and it's just kind of like a perfect chef's kiss combo. I also loved Serena, and I think their banter, I think is some of the best couples banter I've ever read. And then at the end of the book, things get really spicy, and if you like a spicy book, if you don't like a spicy book, like probably skip this, not gonna lie. But if you like a spicy book, at the end of this book, there's heat. I've spoken about this before when I've recommended this book, but there's heat. You know, like when a dog goes into heat, like, yeah, think that, but werewolf edition. That's all I need to say about those books, but they are five star reads from me. And then if you're still on that vibe, you want something that's like a little bit wintry, but fun and not that serious, then you gotta try out some Brynne Weaver. The first book that you're gonna start with is Butcher and Blackbird, which is her kind of like iconic book that I think really is the first book that kind of kicked off Brynne being kind of viral, or at least it was the first book that I came across that was like a viral piece of work from her. But Butcher and Blackbird, it follows two serial killers that hunt other serial killers. It's a romance, it's hilarious, and you have to audiobook it. I think this is very famously like one of the best audiobooks, I don't know about like ever produced, but it kind of has that level of hype around it because it's extremely rare for an audiobook to be produced where a female voice actor and a male voice actor are in the same room together and film it together. That's a very expensive way to produce an audiobook. So it's very rare for that to be the case, but this book was produced like that, which means that when you're listening to it, you get to hear them like interrupting each other, talking over each other. You get to hear their like frustrations and their like ughs and like all of the sound effects that come from all of the interactions between a couple, okay? They bicker, they fight. All of a sudden it gets very spicy towards the end, which is like almost a little bit too much for me in this book, but it is technically like a dark romance because they're serial killers. You get some pretty gruesome death in here, and it's also a romance, and it's just a really fun time, and you have to listen to the audiobook. Okay, then once you've read that, you're gonna read Taurus Season, which for me, I loved even more than I loved Butcher and Blackbird. This is a story about a woman who is also a serial killer, and she murders annoying tourists that come to her town. She believes she's protecting her town by murdering the annoying tourists that come and visit there. Completely ridiculous, I know. The killing feels like quite justified in Butcher and Blackbird because they're hunting pretty horrific serial killers, like they're serial killers killing baddies. This book is like a little bit more ridiculous, let's say, but I found it so hilarious. And the male main character is also kind of a serial killer, but he's killing people for a very specific reason. And one of the people on his kill list is our female main character. So he's traveled to this town to hunt her down and kill her. And I love their dynamic. He meets her and he's like, yeah, I hate you, I'm gonna kill you. And she's kind of like, okay, I have my own stuff to do. I'm not scared of you. I'm not going anywhere. I've got these irritating tourists to kill. So you do you, buddy. I'm not already fussed. And let's just like crack on. Their banter is so good. And I just love that it's almost like trying to be enemies to lovers because of how much he hates her. And she is just kind of like, not really having it, not really phased. She's just like not scared of him in any capacity. She's just not running away. Like she's just existing. And they basically end up in this kind of unfortunate alliance where there's a true crime, I don't know if it's a podcaster or like a true crime investigator of some description who comes to the town because he thinks weird stuff is happening there or has happened there in the past. And they kind of end up in this weird alliance agreeing to protect each other's like dodgy secrets of killing people if they each get something from the other one, like to work together to protect these secrets and try and throw off this true crime guy and get him to leave town so they can kind of get back to doing whatever they were doing. It's funny, it's filled with banter. I had a whale of a time. Like I don't know what to tell you, I had such a good time. And sometimes during the winter months, you just need some comedy, you know? You just need some comedy to lift your spirits. And this is a book that's gonna do that for you. Okay, we're officially leaving all of the dark books behind. We've got no death. We've got nothing grim is happening anymore, okay? We're entering our sports romance era. Guys, tis the season, tis sports season. We can't have a sports season, we can't have ice hockey season without talking about some ice hockey romances. Let's start with Windy City. Now, not all of the Windy City books are all about ice hockey. Some of them do cover some other sports as well. But the first book is Ice Hockey, Where It All Begins, and it's one of my favorite series of all time. If you guys saw the reading vlog where I finished Rewind It Back, which is the final book in the series, and you saw me sobbing, then you know just how obsessed with these characters I am. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, you've got 5 books in this interconnected standalone series, each one which follows a different professional sports player and them basically just being so down bad for the woman that they fall for. These are not book boyfriends, like these are book husbands. These men are unlike anything else. Like these are like the unmatched men. And the found family, like the friendship group between all of the men and all of the women across this series is just like my favorite thing to read ever. Like you become so invested in these characters. Oh, I just love these books so much. I think for a lot of people, Mile High is like the least favorite one. Some people recommend that you can actually just skip Mile High and go on to the second one. I've already said, you know how I am. I personally like getting all the depth and all the crumbs and all the context behind every single character that I'm going to read in a series. So I literally can't skip a book. It's just not in my nature. I need it all. I need to be fed every last drop. So I wouldn't recommend you skip the first one, but it is some people's least favorite. So maybe if you don't like love it, but you enjoy it, like I just plow on with the rest of them because book 2 is one of my favorites in the series. I mean, I actually don't know how I'd ever rank them all, but is one of my favorites. Ryan Shea. The man that he is, the man that he is. If you want a sports romance rec, like here you go. And if you want to dip your toe into sports romance because you haven't read any before, then I'd just go straight for gold. Like don't mess around, just go right for the good stuff. And this is the good stuff. Okay, now we really are going right to the other end of the spectrum. Now, these are some books. I've been on a bit of a journey with these books. I think I was a bit of a hater at the beginning. Now I'm here recommending them to you, and that is the Vancouver Storm series by Stephanie Archer. I am gonna take back my hate, okay? Some of my comments still stand, but I'm taking back my general negativity that I think I gave when I first listened to the first book. I think this series is perfect for the situation that you need them for. Number 1, this is a series that I believe should just be exclusively listened to on audio. They're great audiobooks. You don't get loads of depth of character and you don't get lots of context about like a broader world that they exist in. It is definitely a romance. The entire plot is the romance between the female main character and the male main character, and you don't really get much else that goes on. The found family is fun. The romance is very sweet. They're very spicy. The spice is always written really well. Like that's great in these books. I think these books are a really fun, enjoyable time for putting in whilst you're getting on with other stuff. You don't need to be concentrating too intensely on what you're listening to, but it's a really light-hearted, fun story where you can just enjoy. If you're a romance girly, then you get it. Like you just want to really enjoy two people falling in love. I just love reading two people falling in love. It just makes my heart so happy. And these books tick that box for me every time. Like every time a new one comes out, I'm like, cool, I know what I'm listening to next. And I think over the next few months when we do read darker books, these are perfect for sprinkling in amongst your pretty intense fantasies, amongst some of your darker, more thought-provoking, like soul-crushing books. Like, you need a Stephanie Archer to read or listen to specifically after you read those. And I'm now just going all in on saying I genuinely recommend them. Next, we've got one of the best standalone romance books that I've probably ever read. You don't know the meaning of the word slow burn until you've read this book. This book rewrites the definition of slow burn. I would almost say, like, as a genre, this is almost more women's fiction leading romance. Like, it's so much about the story of our female main character and basically starting over her life from scratch in a small town. And so much of it is about her going through grief from losing her mother, of finding a new job and making friends and just building her life from scratch. And then you get these little tiny sprinklings of crumbs of romance just dotted in there, and then the romance kind of builds and builds throughout the book, but so slowly. Like, this book is just like beautiful and perfect for this time of year. You could almost read it anytime. It starts in like spring, summer. I think it pretty much starts in summer, and then it runs all the way through till winter, and you're finishing the book when there's snow and you're in puffy coats, but it's a small town in the mountains in the countryside, and it's so atmospheric and so cozy and wonderful. And oh my gosh, I'm so jealous of you already if you haven't read this yet. Just curl up on the sofa under a blanket and like dive into this love story. And it's a chunky one for a love story, so you've got some good quality time with these characters, and that's one of the best things about this book, that you really do feel like you spend so long with them and you really get to know them. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Okay, down to the final two romance book recs that I've got for you. Up next, one that will break your heart. We have Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Again, I know this is like incredibly viral. You may have already read it, but if you haven't read it, like Greek mythology retelling, of course, we have Achilles in the title. The story follows Achilles and Patroclus. Achilles and Patroclus are known to be, in Greek mythology, they are known to be childhood friends. This story takes their childhood friendship and builds on that and takes you through just one of the most like beautiful love stories ever, shall we say. Like, it is so beautifully written and so deeply profound and heartbreaking and uplifting, and I don't even know, but I don't think, like, I could almost cry. I don't think I've read a book that like kind of really made my heart ache the way this did, maybe ever. Like, it was so powerfully great, just great. And if you haven't read this yet, for some reason, this feels like it's perfect for this time of year to me. Maybe there's like a melancholia to it, but there's also hope in it as well. And I don't know. There's probably too many big emotions to describe this book that I don't even really know. I don't even know. Okay, just this is a book recommendation from me to you. Okay, final romance book rec. This one goes against everything else I've said in this video so far. We're now completely switching up the vibe in the most aggressive way. There's absolutely nothing wintry about this book whatsoever, but it's not my fault if you haven't read You and Me on Vacation yet. And the reason that this book is in this video recommending you to read it now is because at the beginning of January, I think it's the 9th of January, we are getting the Netflix adaptation of this book, and you need to have read it before you watch the show, and we are all going to be watching the show together. So please go and read this. For my Southern Hemisphere girlies who are in their spring summer, first of all, if you're here watching this entire winter book recs video, you are such a real one. Thank you so much for being here. But here's a book rec for you that is going to fit your vibe perfectly. You and Me on Vacation is a pretty summery book, I have to say. It's not exclusively summery, but it is pretty summery. I don't know why Emily Henry is releasing a summery book adaptation on the 9th of Jan, but she is, and we all need to be ready. I'm obsessed with this book. I'm going to be obsessed with the Netflix show, I have no doubt, because the trailers are already perfection. The casting is perfection. Get on it if you haven't read it yet. And also, maybe I'll just give you like a little bit of a reprieve. Maybe it's quite nice to escape. If you don't want to like stick with your vibes, you can escape into a summery book for a short time over the next few months until Jan. Okay, at long last, let me give you my festive, Christmassy specific book recs. This is a pretty short list because I personally don't think Christmas books are that good. I think that for some reason, when you write a Christmassy specific book, it can end up being a little bit cringy and maybe a little bit, I don't know. Most of these books, as we know, are like for the winter in general, and I think these are all perfect to read over Christmas. But if you want to get very festive, if you want to be feeling Christmassy specifically, then these are the books that are perfect for that are actually good. Up first, we have an extremely fun audiobook, The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year by Ali Carter. This is obviously set at Christmas. It's about two writers that get invited to this, I can't remember if he's like very famous or very rich or probably both, but she gets invited to this woman's house and they get there and they are in this house with all of these other very rich, wealthy people that are all kind of part of her family. And there's a murder mystery, and it is honestly exactly like an Agatha Christie. Who doesn't love an Agatha Christie at this time of year? It's exactly like a whodunit Agatha Christie, or like a Knives Out kind of a vibe, but with a bit of romance in it as well. It's so much fun. I don't even know if a physical copy exists. It probably does, but it's perfect on audio. And a murder mystery with a bit of a love story thrown in. Tick. Like, tick. Next, we've got Love Like Farmers by B.K. Borison. I know that some people don't love this one. Maybe they think it's like a little bit boring, but I really loved it. This is for if you want a cozy, calm, like very classic Hallmark movie turned into a book kind of a story. We have our female main character who I believe she does actually run like a Christmas tree farm, like it's that kind of classic of a story. She runs a Christmas tree farm kind of a thing, and it's a romance between her and I think it's like childhood friends to lovers. The romance is just so wholesome, and I just really vividly remember the male main character doing certain things and acting in certain ways that really reminded me of Cameron, so like I'm a little bit biased about the story, but I just thought it was lovely and obviously very Christmassy and very festive, and like it's cold and there's lights and there's Christmas trees and there's hot chocolate, and it was just a lovely story for when you're feeling extremely festive. Even better than Love Like Farms though, in my opinion, for if you're wanting a very festive, comforting book, is another B.K. Borison, and that is First Time Caller. I read this, I think in September, and I regret it. I wish I'd saved it for now, / I might reread it about now. There is technically nothing actually Christmassy about this book. It's not set at Christmas. I don't think there's any mention of the word Christmas anywhere in it. But this book feels sparkly and Christmassy in the most perfect way, and I can't tell you why, it just really does. This book, and then B.K. Borison has another book coming out in, I think, pretty early in the new year. The second book that's coming out after this is, I think it's like interconnected standalone. That one's is also based on like an old kind of 90s rom-com. First Time Caller is based on Sleepless in Seattle, and then the second book is kind of similar to When Harry Met Sally, I believe. And maybe that is why it just feels so like comforting and nostalgic and Christmassy, but I think this is quite ugly truthy. It follows a guy that works for a radio romance hotline. He's the host of Radio Romance Hotline, and a woman calls in to the hotline and ends up arguing with him. And she then ends up going on the show, and they end up having this kind of forced proximity situation where she's going on to the show to try and find love, and he's committed as the host to try and help her find love through other people dialing in to the hotline. And it's such a lovely story. I just loved it. Like I just really, you can see it's like such a big smile on my face. I really love this story. It feels so Christmassy, and I think it is perfect for if you want a Christmas book that is not cheesy or cringy in any way, just lovely and cozy and comforting. First Time Caller. And then the peak of the Christmas books, okay? These two are the best. If you read anything from this entire video over the festive period, let it be one or both of these books. And that is Holiday Romance and Snowed In. These books are so good. These books are so good. They're both romances. Book one is Holiday Romance. It follows our two main characters. They're trying to get home from Chicago to Dublin, and their flights get cancelled, and it's basically the story of them trying to get on flights to different locations and getting on buses and taxis, and you know, you can kind of picture the classic story of them working together to try and get back to Dublin, and a kind of romance develops while they're stuck in airports and things like that. And when they do then get there, like the families that exist there in Dublin, like it all feels so vivid in my mind, and it's so like snowy and Christmassy, but not cringy at all, like very kind of dry sense of humor and really funny, but super swoony. It's just perfect. And the second book in the series is about the male main character's brother from Holiday Romance. Like that's the male main character in the second book, Snowed In. And this is a fake dating story between Christian and Megan, and Christian wants a girlfriend to like introduce to his family, and who doesn't love a bit of fake dating? It's funny. Christian's very like golden retriever, MMC kind of energy, and it's just, these are perfect, okay? Non-cringy, witty banter. These just feel like really solid romance books, kind of in like a Windy City series kind of way. They just happen to be set at Christmas. Perfection. Okay, Oh my gosh, that is it. Those are all of my book recs for you. Now, for those of you that are interested, let me just very quickly whistle you through my TBR for the next few months so that you know the books that I am really prioritizing getting to kind of like right now, just in case you haven't read any of these and you want to read along with me, and then we can like vibe and chat about the same books at the same time over the next few weeks. Oh, here we have the pile. First up, we have Emily Wilde. You know I have been waiting to get to this. I think I said I was going to read this in spring, and then you guys were like, no, it's so wintry. It's so wintry and snow-filled and perfect for winter. Just wait. So that's what I've done. I've just waited, and I can't wait to get to it. This is cozy fantasy, not high fantasy, and it just sounds perfect. A romance between Emily, who is obviously trying to learn all about all these different fairies to build her piece of work, I guess, and then Wendell, who I don't really know what Wendell's deal is, but he's a rival of hers of some description, and it's just meant to be cozy and lovely and wonderful, and I cannot wait. Next, finally, I'm gonna start my Frederick Bachman journey. I have so many books now that I've bought of his and I haven't read any of them. I'm obviously gonna start with Beartown, another one that I've been waiting so long to read. It's literally about an ice hockey obsessed town that live, I don't know where they live, but somewhere incredibly snowy, that is obviously obsessed with ice hockey. The fact that it says that there's an HBO original series makes me very keen to watch that as well, but I definitely need to read this first. Just let me get to it right now. Then we have The Bone Season. I've heard such fantastic things about this series, and there is something about winter, as you can tell from the rest of my recs here, that just calls to me to get sucked into a very like full high fantasy world. And The Bone Season is just one of those books that's meant to be like one of the best of the best. I think it's actually based in London, so biased, and London is split into like different sections, so I'm guessing it's kind of like urban fantasy vibes again, but I don't think this is a romance. I think it's just high fantasy, and I'm so keen to get to it. Then this feels a little bit bad to say, but like probably the book that I'm least excited to read out of all of these is The Christmas Tree Farm by Laurie Gilmore, but I did buy it last year and I still haven't read it yet, so I do want to read it. I think it is like, you know, small town romance. I think it's not going to be that serious, it's not going to be that deep. I'm just worried that it's not going to be that good, but I do want to read it. I need to read it because I bought the book, and yeah, it's Kira hates Christmas, but she bought a Christmas tree farm. Why would you do that? If you hate Christmas, why would you buy a Christmas tree farm? And then Bennett, who comes on a vacation to the town and then helps her out basically, and maybe it'll be sweet. I'm hoping it's just going to be sweet and fun and not that serious, and I can just kind of read it in the evening on a couple of days when I maybe have got lots of family around and it's kind of chill time and I don't need to be like that invested in what I'm reading. I don't know, but I do want to read it. Has anybody read it? Let me know if you enjoyed it. I'm hoping it's just going to be like a cute fun time that's not that deep, but that I'll still enjoy it. Finally, we need to get to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. So many people say it's just one of their best books ever. It's a story about Addie who strikes up a deal with, I think, the devil, or she makes a deal with somebody that means she will live forever, but she is cursed to be forgotten by everybody that she meets, so nobody will ever remember her. And if that just doesn't sound like the premise for the most heartbreaking story, then I don't know what does. And I'm desperate to read this in its own right, and I'm also desperate to read this so that then I can read Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. So I am committed to getting to this like soon, please soon. Crooked Kingdom, obviously there's very little to say about this. I need to finish this duology. I'm terrified to finish this duology. I don't know what else to say. I need to read Crooked Kingdom. I'm gonna read Crooked Kingdom. Send help. Another B.K. Borison. Maybe B.K. Borison's just like becoming my Christmas author, and I'm just gonna read her books like just at Christmas. But this is a very new release that came out literally a couple of weeks ago, I think. And I don't know if it's a fantasy or if it's like it is magical, but I think what I'm gathering from the back is that it's about a girl who is a woman who is very peppy and sunshiny and a people pleaser and a very happy person, and she gets haunted by the ghost of Christmas past, and Nolan is like this grumpy ghost and he haunts her, but I can't gather whether he's like an actual ghost of Christmas past or if we're talking metaphorically. But I think based on the vibes, I'm kind of getting the impression that maybe he's actually a ghost, like the ghost of Christmas past. So I'm really excited to read this one, and it looks like it's gonna again just give me like all the festive vibes. But if it's anything like First Time Caller, I know I'm gonna eat this up, so very excited about this one. And then the book that was actually probably the highest on my TBR for last Christmas that I never got to is One Day in December. This is one of those romances that if the hype is to be believed, I'm gonna love it so much and just want to read this year after year. It's about a woman who one day is on the bus and sees a man at the bus stop, like through the bus window, and kind of it's like a love at first sight situation. She becomes immediately obsessed with him, and she spends the next year of her life telling all of her friends and her family about she saw this man and she wants to find him, and she's just always got him in the back of her mind that like this is the love of her life, this is this perfect man. And then a year later, her best friend and roommate introduces her new boyfriend and the new love of her life to her, the main character, and obviously it's this guy. So this guy is now dating and in a relationship with her best friend. I have no idea if this is a happy ending kind of a book, if this is a sad ending kind of a book. I'm very excited to read this, and I might save this for my kind of like over Christmas, or maybe just like my slightly pre-Christmas read, but I really want to read this one this year. And then finally, the last one that's on my immediate TBR is Anxious People, another Frederick Buckman, and that is purely because the first line on the blurb on the back says, it's New Year's Eve. So I want to read this on New Year's Eve. And I don't think there needs to be any more justification for why I want to read this book at this time of year. And wow, oh wow, just like that, we're done. Those are all the books that I'm going to yak to you about. I hope this video has been helpful. I hope that you found some good books to add to your TBR. Let me know if there are any of these that you think you're gonna either bump up your TBR or you're now gonna add to your TBR that you're excited to read. But thank you so much for being here. The festive bookish vlogs are so close and I'm so excited. Like Bookmas is just the best time of year. I love watching other people's bookish festive vlogs. I'm so excited to create my own. The vibes are just so high right now, guys, and I'm absolutely loving it. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. I hope you're in the middle of such a lovely book, and I cannot wait to see you in the next one. Bye, guys.